Hey everybody, welcome back to our weekly immigration news recap. I'm here with my colleague Matt Gale, who's joining us again this week. Matt, how are you? Are you excited for ALA next week?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited for Ayla. It'll be great to connect with some of our customers and our friends and meet new folks that we haven't had the chance to meet yet. And I love Denver, so I'm excited to be there.
I'm jealous I'm not going for multiple reasons, but it especially hurt me when you guys scheduled a pupusa party because pupusas are one of the best foods in the world. And for all the immigration attorneys who are going to be there who get to eat free pupusas, I am jealous.
Yeah. I want to see how many pupusas we can down as a group. We're super excited about it.
Yeah. Well, we're recording this week's recap at 1:52 p.m. Eastern time. We got a couple things we're going to cover today, some old and some brand new. So items on the agenda for today. First, there's some new news from today and late last night from the Trump administration on their approach to targeting employers as part of their immigration enforcement actions. And obviously, the events in Los Angeles over the weekend have been a big culminator of sort of this conversation, this debate. Second, we're going to go into some of the new updates on the ongoing saga around the Trump administration's actions targeting and impacting foreign students. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at what I think has been largely an undercover trend, which is the incoming increase in the cost of U.S. immigration overall as a result of a lot of the proposals, both publicly announced by the Trump administration, proposals that are being considered in Congress right now, and a lot of the leaks that have come out via the press about what the administration is planning in terms of immigration and visa applications. So with that, Matt, you ready to jump into it?
Yeah. Let's jump into it. Lots to talk
Cool.
about.
So first story that I want to cover, and this sort of uh, came into focus, like I said, over the weekend with the events in LA. But Ben Smith over at Semaphore, I'm not sure if he interviewed Tom Homan, Trump's border czar, or if he is just reporting on an interview that Homan did. But essentially, Homan stated that worksite enforcement operations are going to massively expand. So that was largely covered in last week and over the weekend with ICE raids at Home Depot, for example, in Los Angeles. But ICE raids at a bevy of employers have been going on for the last few months and have really escalated in the last few weeks, especially and continue to this week. And this comes after there was a leaked report of a meeting that Stephen Miller had with ICE leaders, where he basically lambasted them for not getting enough arrests per day. The administration's goal is apparently 3,000 arrests per day, and he explicitly said in that meeting that he wanted ICE officials to start targeting work sites. But for a variety of reasons that many of the practitioners in the audience will know from working with their clients, this is super unpopular with the American people and with American employers in general. And so clearly, President Trump understood the pushback that was coming from this issue because earlier this morning, he posted a truth where he indicated, and I'll share my
The
screen on this.
truth is that what you call them?
That's what they call them. It is a truth social.
Oh,
Uh,
retruths. I did not even know this.
yeah. You got to dig to find these. If you're not in the MAGA world, you gotta really monitor them. Um, but Trump tweeted, "Our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers away from them, with these jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming." Was the last line there from Trump's truth social tweet, whatever you call it.
Changes are
Uh,
coming. So what does that mean?
well, it was followed up on this truth in a bill signing that Trump did literally just an hour ago. And I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I can show just a clip. He was asked about this particular truth by Peter Ducey from Fox News at this bill signing. Let's go ahead and play that. First, on immigration.
what made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotels and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
So, Matt, a lot of contradictory statements between Homan and Trump in the last 24 hours. But what Trump said there, again, at this press conference just an hour ago, he mentioned that they're going to have an order on this soon, referencing farmers and immigrants who work at hotels and other leisure businesses.
I'm
What's your
curious
take?
to see what that order says when it comes out. It sounds like they're saying they're going to do workplace ICE raids, but they're going to limit those raids by industry and by company. And so if you are within agriculture or the tourism sector, then maybe they won't be doing raids. I mean, is that what he's suggesting?
It seems like that's maybe the case. I mean, we know from, we know, and John Basely's in our Immigration Insiders meeting talked a lot about this, that, the Trump administration generally was fairly favorable towards H-2B and H-2A visas in the first administration, and he expects that to continue. And those comments from Trump sort of indicate that could be the case, but also there could be some sort of policy or maybe like you sort of mentioned there, like lack of targeting specific industries that Trump considers and his administration considers to be too important to be a part of their enforcement actions that they're undergoing right now. But so far, and that's why the Homan statement is a little bit of a contradiction. So far, there's been reports of raids at farms, at meatpacking facilities, at a lot of different businesses across the country, where we know from the numbers that most of the arrests that are taking place are of undocumented immigrants who are working at those places who don't have a criminal record other than being undocumented. So could signal a shift in policy coming in the next couple of days.
And we know that many of these categories of work authorizations that have been given in previous administrations, especially the Biden administration, have been revoked, whether that's temporary protected status or humanitarian parole or folks that are asylum seekers. And so I'd be curious if he is saying that within his administration, they're potentially going to bring a carve-out and give work authorizations for certain folks in certain industries. It'll be really interesting to see their approach to this and how maybe the industry that you're working in has an impact on immigration policy.
And the relationship, if you're a large business, that either your trade association or your CEO has with the Trump administration. We know in the past that the administration deals very, in very personal terms with leaders of companies. And I think that could be something that we'll see, on the ICE enforcement front, but I think potentially coming down the line for the high-skilled immigration sector as well. Around H-1Bs and employment-based green cards. I think that's something that immigration practitioners should expect in the summer, if not sooner.
And we know this is super disruptive for businesses across all sectors, and not only the ICE raids, the deportations, the revocations, but also the heightened sense of fear and anxiety. We are hearing reports of folks not even showing up to work. And so it's creating a difficult environment around labor shortages in some
Yeah,
restricted.
and I've been hearing, I'm sure you've been hearing the same thing from a lot of immigration attorneys, that their phones are ringing off the hook and their inboxes are full of either their clients or of companies that they don't have an existing relationship with, asking for guidance on how to prepare and manage for an ICE raid, or for any other immigration enforcement officials coming into their places of business. And I think that's something that's going to continue to stack up on immigration attorneys' desks in the next couple of weeks.
And it makes sense. The pressure is so high for these local ICE offices to meet their numbers. And where do you end up going when you can't find the criminals? You target Home Depot and some of these more obvious places where you can go find folks that are undocumented, and that's going after sectors where we have high percentages of undocumented workers, whether that's construction, agriculture, food and beverage, etc.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of pushback, increasing pushback from Republican elected representatives in the House and in the Senate on some of these ICE raids that are targeted at employers. So that's an area where you're starting to see some breakage in the party line around immigration policy. But that's a good segue into our next topic, where there doesn't seem to be much breakage so far in the Republicans' uh, messaging around this particular issue, and that's the ongoing saga of policies targeting F1 students under the Trump administration. So there's a couple updates on this story that we can look at in just a second. But just for anyone listening who maybe hasn't listened before, who maybe hasn't been following this saga particularly closely, I'll just give a quick recap of what's happened over the past couple months. So in April of this year, a couple of months ago, many of you may know there was a big wave of SEVIS revocations for F1 students. I think it was up to 6,000 or 7,000 F1 students had their SEVIS records revoked. That lasted a couple of weeks. There were a lot of legal challenges that were successful. And then eventually most of those records were reinstated towards the end of April. But
After
ICE,
so many lawsuits,
yeah,
the whole country.
ICE and the Department of Homeland Security indicated that that's not necessarily the end of their attempt at revoking the SEVIS records of certain F1 students. And then towards the end of May, some reports began emerging. I heard from immigration lawyers from AILA of ICE terminating work authorizations, or threatening to terminate work authorizations for OPT holders, F1 OPT holders. Then a couple days after that, there was the mass covered story around DHS halting Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. There's ongoing legal challenges around that, and ongoing responses from the administration that we could do a whole podcast on at some point. Maybe we will once there's some resolution to it. And then that same week, Politico got hold of a leaked State Department cable that revealed that the U.S. consulates abroad were instructed by the Secretary of State to pause all new F, J, and M visa appointments worldwide. The State Department didn't publicly acknowledge the order in that cable for a while, but recently in press briefings, Tammy Bruce, who's the State Department spokesperson, has been asked about it multiple times, and we'll play a clip from her latest briefing on Tuesday, where she shares an update and when folks might be able to expect a resumption of appointments for FJ and M applicants. And then in that same week, this was sort of end of May, early June, there was a lot going on this front. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, released an announcement where he said essentially the State Department has plans to scrutinize and even revoke visas held by Chinese foreign national students who are here in the U.S. if they have ties to the Chinese Communist Party, or if they're involved in STEM fields, essentially any fields that could be related to national security. And on top of that story, in the Harvard story, Trump in a press conference also floated a 15% nationwide cap on international student enrollment. just sort of a flippant comment that was made in passing at a press conference. Those are things that it was something that wasn't really picked up in the media. Oftentimes, it's something that could turn into nothing. But also, we've seen with the Trump administration, a comment at a press conference can turn into a policy proposal that gets released a few weeks later pretty quickly. So that's why we're tracking it, because we may see it pop up as an official policy or as a leaked memo in the next couple of weeks or months here. Okay, so that's the recap of what's been going on. Now I'm going to play quickly just the Department of State Press Secretary Tammy Bruce gave an update on the visa appointment pause for F, M, and J students. So let me just share my screen. We'll play that, Matt, and get your reaction.
Do you have any updates on the temporary pause on scheduling new interviews for student visa applications? Is that still in effect?
I can tell you, of course, and that's a good question because there's so many other conversations about visa restrictions. I do believe that we are in the process, and I don't know if Tommy, we might have to take this back. I know last week that we were in the process of indicating that it would be very soon and that people should start looking for those spaces to open up regarding appointments. Nothing has changed in our encouragement still of people to apply for those student visas. This was a matter of making sure that the process that we were expecting of consulates and embassies was proper when it came to what we expected them to be able to vet for. And that process, we were told, would be rapid. And I think at this point, what I can reassert here is that people should watch for those spaces to be open, should continue to apply. This is not going to be a lengthy or an ongoing dynamic. It was meant for a specific, almost an administrative adjustment. And I would hope perhaps we go back and get more on this. But I think that that's where it stands. And perhaps on Thursday, I can get even something more specific for you on the record. And another reminder to the people watching at home. When I say we're going to take something back, it means that we're going to get an answer to that question for the reporter and get it right back to them as well. And so that'll also help us for the next briefing also.
So I'm not sure. I wasn't able to find out who the reporter was who asked that question because they didn't show their face, and in the transcript they don't identify the reporter. But this comment in the press briefing was flagged to us yesterday by John, basically Center Immigration Insiders meeting. So I went and looked it up. There was supposed to be a press conference today where she was going to give a follow-up announcement on this. The press briefing just didn't happen today. But I talked to our friend Andrew Craybaum over at Bloomberg Law, and he found out that the next press briefing should be next Tuesday. So the hope is we'll get an update on this by the State Department's press secretary by next Tuesday, if not sooner, in some sort of announcement, or if the reporter who asked the question gets a response from the press team over at the State Department. One other thing on this, Matt, that I want to share quickly. So last week we had Gil Guerra from the Niskanen Center join us for the Immigration Weekly News recap. And he flagged that he thought that I asked him essentially, like, what should immigration practitioners be looking for in terms of what's going to actually drive policy when it comes to immigration? And he referenced the Secretary Rubio's statement on the State Department potentially revoking visas for Chinese students and Chinese foreign nationals who are working on F1 OPT and STEM OPT, which Gil estimated in his research to be about 150,000 people actively studying or working in the United States. And he said, watch for what happens around the discussions with a China trade deal, because that announcement by Marco Rubio is likely part of the negotiating strategy around the broader trade deal. Lo and behold, yesterday, another Truth Social from President Trump, there was a little snippet in there where he was announcing, I guess, the preliminary discussions around the trade deal have been agreed upon by the Chinese and American delegations. But President Trump, for those listening, in his Truth Social about that trade deal, said, we will provide to China what we agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, and then in parentheses, which has always been good with me. So it sounds like there may be a rollback of that initial statement from Secretary Rubio. targeting Chinese F1 students and F1 OPT and STEM OPT holders. So Matt, those are sort of the two big updates on those policies targeting foreign students. What are your thoughts and reactions?
So that makes me think that the specific on China specifically, it is a negotiating tactic as they're doing these trade deals, because we know that there have been challenges with, and that as that escalated, that the Trump administration was looking for opportunities to talk to China and open dialogue. And so they likely were looking for other areas in addition to the tariffs where they could ramp up that leverage. And from that Truth Social, it seems pretty clear that Trump has been okay with Chinese students studying in the US, and he knows there's a lot of Chinese students studying in the US, and he knows they contribute a lot to these universities, and that a lot of them end up staying and contributing a lot to our critical industries, especially within technology. And so it seems like that's not going to continue to move forward, and Chinese nationals will be able to come to the US and study if he's been okay with it, and they are working out a deal with China that'll work out. I know that folks in Congress are facing extreme pressure with the pause on the FJ and M visa interviews and categories. The NAFSA is following this very closely. All of the international educators, and I know that they're urging folks to reach out to Congress, and we know that the higher ed industry doesn't have as much of an ear among the Trump administration as maybe they did with previous administrations, and the Trump administration doesn't seem to care about the impacts that it has to their industry. But it is extreme. If you think about all these congressional districts, man, universities are so critical. Like I grew up in Utah, and I think of BYU in Utah County, and their very close relationship with John Curtis, the senator from Utah, and Mike Lee. Mike Lee's dad was president of BYU, and the international education at BYU is critical, and that's a conservative school. And so I'm sure all of these the leaders of the universities across the entire nation are thinking about how this could impact them. And NAFSA said yesterday that at this time, this is a peak time when at least 50% of new international students will need to schedule visa interview appointments in order to arrive in time for the fall semester. So think about that. That is crazy. And the impact that this could have on schools, if this thing gets prolonged, could be massive. So I'm sure all of the presidents of these universities, they are calling up their senators, they are calling up their folks in Congress, and they're saying, we need to get movement on this quickly. And that's why we're seeing a pref briefing like this.
Yeah, and nobody's yet released an estimate. I haven't seen NASA do it, or any of the organizations who might be able to crowdsource the data on how many foreign students are in total coming into the freshman class of all the universities across the country this year. But my suspicion is it's in the hundreds of thousands, if not maybe in the tens of thousands for sure. So that's a lot of people. It's a lot of revenue for the universities, like you mentioned, and for the college towns, right, that rely very heavily upon new freshman classes coming in for goods and services and brick and mortar around those towns.
And if you think about the international students, they are spending a lot more than the local students. They are coming in, they are buying a bunch of furniture, they're looking for a new apartment. And many of these international students, they come from high income backgrounds because you have all these strict financial requirements. And so it's for sure a big boon to these communities, and both small communities and even big communities. It's being here in New York City, there are so many international students that are coming in studying at NYU, Columbia, and they're a huge part of the financial dynamics at these schools and also the culture of these schools.
Yeah. And again, Nahal Tuzi at Politico got a hold of this cable 2 weeks ago now. So we're on week 3 of these visa interviews being paused, and we're going into week 4. And hopefully there's an announcement next week with an update. And reminder for folks that the pretext for this pause is to institute new social media vetting requirements for FM and J applicants in particular.
Finn, do you know, did they not have that at all before? And this is something brand new that they're implementing?
You already need to include your social media handles on the DS-160 when you apply for a visa appointment at a U.S. consulate. It's very unclear, and I would love to actually get some recently former consular officers on the Immigration Insiders meeting in the next few months to talk about this. It's unclear what the protocols that make up the current social media vetting look like. And what the new protocols will be, right? What they're working on behind the scenes in order to enhance that social media vetting process.
Yeah,
So
we'll have to follow up with folks and let them know, hey, what did it look like before and what does it look like now?
yeah, I'd love to get some experts on Immigration Insiders to really break that one down in particular. You know, and then on Trump's truth around the China deal, you know, it's possible in the next few weeks we see a revised statement from the Secretary of State's office around what you know, revocations for certain Chinese foreign nationals who are here studying on F1 or working on OPT or STEM OPT might be. But as many of the practitioners on the call know, Chinese foreign nationals make up the second highest number of folks working here on OPT and STEM OPT. And a lot of the employers, a lot of the clients of the practitioners that we talk to every single day are employing Chinese foreign nationals on OPT and STEM OPT. And as the name gives it away, in STEM roles, right? Maybe not roles directly related to national security per se, if you're working at a SaaS company or a tech company, but there was no clear definition given in the initial statement by Secretary Rubio of what sort of qualifies as a STEM field that's a risk to the national security. So it's possible we see a revised statement come out in the next few weeks. It's also possible that we hear absolutely nothing, right? And this sort of fizzles out. I think that would be welcome to a lot of the immigration practitioners who are listening in, because I don't think there was enough coverage of that statement a couple weeks ago because there was so much else going on in the news. But one of the things that we are trying to do on this podcast and our Immigration Insiders meeting is help practitioners cut through the noise and start to understand what signals they should be looking for what policies are actually going to have legs underneath them and become something that's really going to impact them and their clients, versus it was great to have Gil on last week because of his background. What policies and policy announcements really have very little to do with immigration. They're related to a different area within the government, geopolitical or domestic political, that aren't going to have big legs, but are all about making a big political splash. All right. Let's wrap up with our last story today, which is something that I think is not new news per se. Well, there's a new news item that precipitated me wanting to cover this particular topic, and that is, I'll share my screen, the release of the new gold card, which is now being called Trump card website, which I'm sharing here on the screen for those listening.
I have not seen this.
Yeah.
When did this come out?
Today. Yep.
Oh, wow.
We will
this is a news breaking podcast.
For folks that are just listening on the podcast, we'll put the link to the trumpcard.gov the show notes, so you can go check it out yourself. But essentially, there's not much to it.
This is a .gov?
This is a .gov. Yeah.
My goodness.
Because we're looking at a picture of the actual card, and it has Donald Trump's face on it, his headshot on it, and it's not called the gold card anymore. It's called the Trump card. It's a one-page website. It's allowing people to register to say that they're interested in applying for a Trump card. For those of you,
This webpage looks like a brand new like YC SaaS startup.
my friend
Like-
Sandeep from the Economic Innovation Group, he tried to sign up for it and he got an error message. So there's clearly some issues with it already. But for those of you, for a little bit of context, the Trump card, previously known as the gold card, is a $5 million green card, essentially, that foreign nationals can purchase and get all the benefits of a green card. And apparently, according to the Trump administration, additional benefits as well, though it's unclear what those additional benefits would be. There's a lot of speculation and a lot of reporting that this is going to replace the EB-5 visa. If not outright replace it, which would, my understanding, would take a congressional action, it would effectively replace it. There's a lot of things the administration could do with the visa bulletin, for example, where they can essentially make the EB-5 pathway non-existent, virtually impossible to pursue, so that they then funnel folks to the Trump card instead, which is obviously a substantial increase from the I believe it's like a $500,000 or $800,000 investment. EB-5
Yeah,
attorneys.
so let's say this as this is. They keep talking about the gold card. They're not going to be talking about the Trump card. Really, what this is it's a significant increase in the investment you have to make to get an EB-5 green card.
Yeah, that's a good summary to put it, or a good way to put it into a summarized way. But yeah, so this is the news that precipitates what I think is an undercovered trend, and I posted about this on LinkedIn this morning, which is the Trump administration's policies, both those that have been publicly announced and those that have been leaked to the press, are all signaling that they're trying to make immigration, either temporary or permanent, to the United States much more expensive. And that's the route that they're going, and that they're going to continue to go. So one more item I want to share. This is a report from Reuters. It's actually from a couple weeks ago, but I didn't even know about it until this week. It was a leak, a leaked memo that Reuters was able to get, where the Trump administration is now planning to propose a $1,000 fee to fast track tourist visas, so B1, B2 visas for tourists. So essentially, premium processing at the consulate in order to get an appointment for your B1, B2 will cost $1,000. This is something that, many of the consular officers or former consular officers or folks who work in that space who may be listening will know this is not something that existed before. So this would be essentially a new fee in order to get an expedited appointment. And then I'll share just my last screen here, because the other component of this is the One Big Beautiful Bill, which John basically gave us a pretty good rundown of sort of the timeline of that passing and what the immigration provisions in it might look like in our Immigration Insiders meeting yesterday. But Stephen Miller, it's sort of like a White House video recording on the bill, talked about the immigration provisions and sort of the overarching plan of the administration to charge more to foreign nationals who are immigrating here, again, either temporarily or permanently, are coming for work or asylum, any of the different avenues, to increase fees for them to pay for the administration's other primarily enforcement operations and plans. So let me just play this clip here quickly, Matt.
The immigration provisions in this bill are paid for by charging foreign nationals more money when they want to come to America. So by raising the fees on foreign nationals who are seeking visas and other immigration benefits, we are paying for the wall, for the ICE officers, for the border agents, for the pay raise that President Trump promised the ICE officers and the border agents. So we are literally paying for the defense of the homeland by increasing fees on those in other countries who want to come here. So it's a win-win.
So when you hear Stephen talk,
and here's what that looks like in practice. This is a screen share, and again, I'll put this link in the comments for folks who are just listening, or excuse me, in the show notes for folks who are just listening. But this is just sort of a list of provisions, an expansion of immigration fees from the One Big Beautiful Bill from the House Judiciary Committee. And I posted on LinkedIn about this, and I'll share it. in the show notes as well. Sort of all of the different fee increases that have been proposed by both the Trump administration and then also by Congress in this one big beautiful bill, all of which I would suspect are going to go into effect at some point in the not so distant future. And that's going to be a sea change for a lot of immigration practitioners. But it's also, and their clients, of course, who are the ones who are going to be footing these bills, either the employer clients or the foreign nationals themselves who will need to pay for these. But I also suspect that the trend of fee increases is going to accelerate and is going to expand into employment-based immigration applications. Especially today, Joseph Edlow's nomination to be USCIS director moved out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It'll be voted on by the full Senate, and he'll be in officially at the head of USCIS pretty quickly here, and he'll be able to officially start to institute a lot of the reforms that he's said publicly and that has sort of been insinuated privately in some of the reports about his plans. And I think that increasing fees for all sort of areas of immigration will be one of them, but particularly employment-based. So, Matt, a lot to cover there, but I want to get your thoughts.
Something I'm interested in is, so they're saying there tons and tons of revocations around many of these categories, right? Like, so they have this fee for people who are coming in from humanitarian parole, but they've revoked the EADs for people through humanitarian parole. They're limiting asylum in many ways, EADs and green cards, and they've talked about this a lot. But now we're talking about all these fees for asylum seekers, for parolees, for folks on TPS. So are they anticipating they're going to open up those categories again so that they can start to collect revenue? And like, what does that look like? And then my other sort of call out here is the reason that the government didn't charge for these things before is because people that are applying for humanitarian parole, they're coming from very difficult circumstances. And even coming up with $500 is so significant. I in Salt Lake, I got connected with some Venezuelan folks who came through CBP-1. And so they made a CBP-1 appointment. And I think under the Biden administration, the CBP-1 appointments from families or people with children were being prioritized. And so they had their appointment at the border and they were paroled in and they got work permits through humanitarian parole. The government didn't charge fees during that whole process because they're asylum seekers, they're parolees. And I think the idea behind that was that these folks, they need help. America is the richest country in the history of the world. And part of our ethos has been to help those across the world who need our help. And I guess what all of these fees mean in many of these categories is that's changing. And now we're going to monetize the hardship that people are going through. And tell you what, that looks more like what many other countries have already been doing. When this family traveled through Mexico, they had to pay fees all along the way. And some of those fees were informal fees to bad actors. Some of those fees were fees to the Mexican military or other governmental organizations. And so I don't know. For me, looking at everything, all of these provisions in the one big, beautiful bill, it makes me sad, and I don't think it's a good thing. But I'm curious to see how it all plays out.
It's true. It echoes the conversation we're having at the top of the podcast, which is sort of the contradictions of the Trump administration when it comes to their policies and their public announcements around these things that are difficult to follow, and it's difficult to know exactly what direction they're going to go in and what's actually going to become either a formal policy, a formal rule, formal law.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have a conversation with Stephen Miller and say, hey, like, so you're saying that now we're going to charge foreign nationals and they're going to fund Homeland Security. So I see that we've added a fee for TPS and parole, but like I thought you guys didn't want to do TPS and parole anymore. So are you going to I'd love to know just how that's going to work and how you envision it works out, because you can't have your cake and eat it too.
My suspicion is, like with everything else, they expect legal challenges to any new immigration policy that they roll out. And if any of the actions they've taken to essentially terminate TPS and other asylum programs over the last couple of months are challenged in court, and ultimately the hundreds of thousands of people who are here are allowed to stay by a judge, there will, at least if the one big beautiful bill is passed, there will be fees new fees that they will then have to pay in order to retain that status, right? Most of them are new, and again, if folks are watching this instead of just listening, you can look at the list. The vast majority of new fees in the one big beautiful bill that are being proposed are targeted at asylum seekers and TPS holders, for example. Well, that can wrap us up for today. We'll continue to cover these stories closely and any news stories that pop up. Again, we recorded this on Thursday afternoon East Coast time, so if anything new happens, any breaking news happens around immigration between now and tomorrow morning, Friday, when we release this, we will cover that in next week's episode. Matt, any final thoughts you want to share?
If you're in Denver now, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in Denver, or you're preparing for your trip to go to Denver at the annual American Immigration Lawyers Conference, please stop by our booth, say hello, introduce yourself, and please block out some time on your Friday evening and come join us to have some pupusas and an open bar. We'd love to get to talk with you and get to know you and hear a little bit more about your practice. So, and if you're not going to AILA, well, please join us for our next virtual event, our next Immigration Insiders, where we'll have Doug Rand, former senior advisor to the director of USCIS, who will be joining us. What day is that? The 25th?
June 25th. And Doug's been posting a lot on LinkedIn about the travel ban, the entry ban, which we didn't even really touch on today in particular. So I'm excited to dig into his thoughts on that as well.
And last thing, this podcast is brought to you by Lawfully Pro. We have built an incredible tool. I did a couple demos today, and just it was awesome to see how excited the attorneys were when we were showing them this tool that we've built and how it can help streamline workflows, reduce manual work, give more insight and transparency to the foreign nationals that you're working with in your practice. So if you'd like to see it, please reach out to us. We would love to show it to you.
Awesome. Well, we'll end it there, and we'll see everybody next time. Thanks, Matt.
Bye-bye.